Welcome back to Amplifying Our Voices. I'm your host, Patty Hayak. Thank you for being here today. In today's episode, I'm sitting down with Ruby Garcia. She's a leadership and visibility coach, community builder, co-founder of the Latino AI Summit. Ruby's story is one of identity, belonging, and choosing herself after years of being the only in so many rooms. In this conversation, she opens up about healing in community, redefining visibility, and building spaces where Latinos can feel seen, safe, and powerful. I can't wait for you to hear her brilliance. Good morning, Ruby. Thank you so much for being here today. I am so excited to talk to you and learn a little bit more about you.
Thank you, Patty. I'm excited to be here, and I'm so proud of you for launching this podcast and amplifying voices, and just seeing you shine has been such a joy.
Oh, thank you, Ruby. You have been one of the people that has really inspired me to show up on LinkedIn and be visible. When I joined the Latina Visibility Challenge and got to know a little bit more about your story and your why, it really inspired me. And I just knew that your story was one that I wanted to showcase. So again, thank you so much for being here.
It means so much to me. I appreciate that.
I'd like to start off with your beginnings. Can you talk a little bit about your childhood and how that shaped who you are today?
Yeah, when it comes to my childhood, so I'm first gen. I'm a daughter of immigrants. My dad passed away when I was about a year old. My mom remarried by the time I was 2 to a Polish American. So I grew up in a very bicultural household. Well, I had my Mexican side of the family, and then I had my American side of the family. Yeah, as I got older, I'm a little too Mexican for my American family. I'm a little too American for my Mexican family. Where do I kind of fit in? So identity has been a really big part of my own journey. I think on top of that, many of us have different roles. We have intersectional identities. Part of mine is also being part of the disabled community. I was born with a limb difference. And so that was another layer, right? It was kind of like, where do I fit in with my family? But then also just being, in school, being one of the only Latinas, being someone with a limb difference. So inclusion in general has been really important to me. And so when I think about like even the Latina Visibility Challenge, and what it means to be seen. I actually think it's a lot of my own, the way I've processed a lot of my own healing journey is I always want to make sure that others feel seen, because I know what it feels like to either feel invisible or spend your life hiding because maybe you're embarrassed about where you grew up or an accent or the way that you look or any of those things. And so the challenge, for example, is an opportunity to really bring Latinas together to fully like own their narrative, to share their brilliance. So I feel like LinkedIn is kind of like the lead in, but it's really like much more about not only just representation, not only others seeing you, but you being able to see yourself.
That's beautiful. I couldn't agree with that more. I am also first gen, and that not belonging to either one, being that in between. And then even kind of like my adulthood being that healing and unlearning everything that I was taught as a kid. And there's so many things that I love about the Latina Visibility Challenge. And the big one that has stuck with me is when you've said, we heal in community. And I see that happening. I've done a lot of healing on my own, but there's something magical that happens when you come in community.
I think it's the power of being witnessed. I believe in individual therapy, and I've done it before too, and it's very helpful. And there are times when that works. And I feel like there's so much power in just being validated and just being able to. One of the things I heard, what's his name? Gabor Mate, he's a trauma
Yeah.
therapist, right? Like
Yeah.
he's actually said that the trauma doesn't happen when the event or the circumstance happens. It's also what happens afterwards. So like if you weren't able to, if you didn't verbalize that to someone, or if you repress that and shove those feelings inside, that's where the trauma occurs, because you feel that no one was there to listen to you. So I feel like when we're in community and we heal in community, it's also because we're getting to share that, and that all of a sudden the shame starts to dissipate, right? Or you realize you're not the only one that's having this experience, or oh my gosh, like it's not even me at all. I'm being gaslit, or whatever the thing is. And
Right.
so it's just, and I think especially with women, we tend to flock, is what I say. We tend to flock to each other, and we get to process that in community. And that has been probably the most powerful healing that I've ever gone through.
Thank you. So I want to go back to a little bit about how you were saying where you didn't feel like you belong. Can you talk a little bit more about that experience on how did you find belonging?
I I love my family very much, and my experience was even in my own family, I didn't feel like I belonged. I have 3 siblings. I'm the oldest. I was the only one from my mom's first marriage. I'm Mexican by both of my parents, and then my siblings, if you saw them, like 2 of them are like 5'10", blonde hair, green eyes, right? We don't look like siblings. And so even in my family, I felt like I operated differently. I didn't have the same sense of humor. I didn't like the same things. And so there was that layer in my family feeling like I'm different. I'm not like them. I love them. They're my siblings. They'll always be my siblings. I'll go to bat for them any day. And we're really, really different. And so I had that layer, right? And then when I went into school, I grew up in a very conservative white neighborhood. I sat at the Mexican table at lunch. There was not even diversity with Latinidad. It was like Mexicans, and it was like freshmen all the way to seniors. So one of my best friends was a senior when I was a freshman. And that was because we sat at the Mexican table. And so I was one of the only ones there. And then being born with a limb difference on top of that was just another layer. We all can relate to a time where we feel like we don't belong. And I think mine came very early on, which was a middle school experience where I was bullied really, really bad, something that wouldn't be tolerable in schools today. Thankfully, there was no social media back then, but that really kind of shaped my perspective, and it really caused me to, I would say, kind of withdraw. And I always felt something like I was not enough or I was broken. It would kind of try to traumatize me, to be honest. I was 12 years old. That experience, as awful as it was, also really shaped how I think about belonging. Going into being a first gen college graduate, being a first gen corporate working professional, and then being first gen entrepreneur. In a lot of those spaces, I've been the one, the only, or the few. And so because of my experiences of that from family, from childhood experiences, from being one of the onlys, I really emphasize inclusion, right? I always want to make other people feel like they're seen. If I see someone off in the periphery, I want to bring them in. And that's been really important into any space that I have. And not only just inviting them in, but making sure that they feel safe enough to speak up, to share, to be witnessed. I think many of us walk through thinking, I don't belong in this room. And I've really reshifted that into thinking that's exactly why you belong in that room, right? Not
Yes.
only can I go into a room at, where maybe there's not a lot of Latinas, but I also bring that bicultural lens. I bring a perspective of being someone as part of the disabled community. There's different facets of me. I bring being a mother into the room. So I think a lot of times we look at things from a deficit standpoint of what
Mhm.
don't I have, and really we should be looking at it from like an assets. Like your lived experience is valuable. That is an asset. You cannot teach, grit or problem solving or, being resourceful at Yale. You can teach it in theory, right? But as a first gen, like we've lived through experiences where we've had to figure it out, right? We've had to navigate systems that weren't designed for us. We've had to translate for our parents. I mean, I would go to my brother had like IEP meetings. My mom would bring me because even though she spoke English, she felt it very difficult to communicate. And so I was still
Yeah.
like in high school, or I was even younger going into some of these meetings with her to kind of act as a buffer. And so even though schools, they can't teach that, and that's something that we have. We need to be proud of that and leverage that to our benefit too, to our advantage.
Yes, I love that so much. Gosh, you are speaking to so much that resonates with me, especially the part where you walk into a room and you notice that you're the only one. You're like the only Latina, you're the only brown person, or you're the only female, whatever the case is. And then we start, like you said, going from that deficit or even like a fear based. mindset. But if you turn it around, like, no, that's exactly why you're in the room, right? To bring that different lens. And that's what makes us special. And like you said, we've been through these experiences before where we've had to figure it out, and it's just what we do. And and so yeah, so we need to embrace that a little bit more. Was there anyone who poured into you to allow you to take up space?
That's a good question. Let me think about this for a second.
Or like, what was the moment for you where it shifted, where you said, okay, no, I belong here, or I am allowed to take up space. I'm going to
You know what?
shine.
So I think there are little like events or things that happen led up to it. But honestly, when I look back at it, I think I got sick of my own ish. Like I got sick of waiting, asking permission, wanting to be picked, right? And I think that also goes back to that bullying experience of like wanting to fit in and pick me, pick me. And I think at some point I was like, why am I counting on other people to pick me? I need
Hmm.
to pick me. I need to choose myself. I've said this with the summit that we've been working on, but even in my own experiences, if I'm not going to wait to be asked to speak, for example, I'm going to create my own platform. That's one of the reasons I leveraged LinkedIn, right? Was like, even with live streams or writing, it was like, I don't know if anyone's going to invite me to speak at things, but I'm just going to show up. And it became kind of and I've used this in the challenge, the you versus you, right? It was me versus me at the time. And so there wasn't necessarily a person where it like flipped the switch. It was just like, I'm so sick of waiting for other people to give me permission, validate me, to tell me it's okay. Like, I'm done. I'm just going to do this because I get to do this.
Yes. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about visibility and taking up space. What's the biggest misconception people have about being visible?
That it's only online, I think. That being visible is only about being online. I think being visible, well, that's part one of it, because it's also about just like how you show up in real life, how you show up in your interactions, how you show up in your relationships. So it is visibility through the challenges. We focus on the online part, but it's really about where you show up, how you show up everywhere. I think the second part is kind of what I was speaking to earlier, that visibility is only about others seeing you and others validating you. When I think the more important conversation is, are you seeing yourself?
I love that. Now, again, I love how you show up on LinkedIn. Like I said, you're one of the content creators that inspired me to show up on LinkedIn. And I just love how vulnerable you are and how authentic you are. Can you talk about a little bit about what does vulnerability look like for you as a leader?
I don't know how to be any other way. I really don't. I feel like this is just the way I'm almost designed. Like, I don't know how to be any other way but vulnerable. But I think what I've learned is that number one, people really connect to vulnerability. And that's really where like the relationships have depth, where you can cultivate that depth is through those intimate conversations or sharing life lessons or the hard times. Like there's just a different level of connection. If I just tell you all of my wins and successes, I feel like you know me at a surface level. But if I
Right.
told you everything that it took me to get to that win, now you know me at a very deep, intimate level. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's a strength. I think more of us could benefit from that, because leadership in itself is messy,
Hmm.
right? But we're always kind of presented with this like polished look, and we put someone on a pedestal. And the reality is, when you're vulnerable with other people around you, then you also give them permission to take risks, to make mistakes, to be able to innovate, right? If you want your team to do that, you have to be the one to model it for them. So I think that's
Hmm.
really important. And a lot of times we're given one perception of leadership, which is like you're on a pedestal, you know everything, you're kind of controlling and dictating. But to me, like I want to redefine leadership, because I don't think that's really how it is. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes of being a leader that not everyone gets to see. And I think that's why people don't become leaders, because it's hard. it's hard and it's messy and sometimes it's uncomfortable and it means having difficult decisions. And so,
Right.
but I think if we can actually share some of these lessons with others, we normalize the experience of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because when I think about leaders that inspire me, vulnerability is something that comes to mind. And I know not everyone's great at it because, I think society has taught us that being vulnerable is being weak, right? And I just want to know that one, that they're human, that they make mistakes or that they're afraid of this or that. And I'm not saying tell us all your trauma or all your fears, but I do need to see some sort of vulnerability because that shows our humanity.
It does show our
And
humanity.
so I love that you mentioned that. So thank you.
And if I can just say one more thing about that too, I think
Yeah.
you're also pointing to something that I hear often is like, well, I don't want people to know this about me, or how vulnerable do I need to be to create that connection? One is like you get to decide. You get to decide. That's something that
Right.
you have agency over. There's parts of my life that I don't talk about online because I consider them to be either more personal or sacred. And so it's not just about being vulnerable and being authentic at the same time, but know that like there's different levels. So I'm the same person online that I'm in real life. Actually, that's I think one of the best compliments I get is when people meet me and they're like, "You're exactly like you are online." I'm like, "Well, I hope so." The only thing they say is like, "You're so much shorter than I thought." And I'm like, why does everyone always say that? They think I'm tall. And I'm like, I'm 5'1". But I think with the being vulnerable and authenticity too is like not everyone should and not everyone should have access to the front row seat of your life, right? So there are different like levels of like all of it is being vulnerable and authentic, but someone at work might only see a certain portion. Someone that maybe you go out with on occasion a friend, but you're always like meeting up somewhere, they're going to maybe see a different level. Someone in your home, like I'm very particular about who comes into my home because to me my home is my sanctuary. So
Right.
if I invite you to my home, I'm inviting you into a different level of authenticity and relationship with me, right? As opposed to like if you have a partner, if you're sleeping in the same bed, that's a whole level of different intimacy and authenticity too. So it's also about distinguishing like who gets to see the vulnerable parts of you and you get to have agency of what that looks like.
Beautiful. Thank you for expanding on that. Now, can we switch gears a little bit and talk about your career?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I was 18 years old when I first started. My first job was at GE Capital. I didn't have a traditional college path, so I actually went back to school as an adult. So at 18 years old, I was working for GE Capital, doing customer service. I spent 15 years in working for Fortune 500 companies, doing sales training. And during that same time, I had my family. I went back to school. I got my bachelor's, I got my master's in public policy. And then about 15 years into my career, I wanted to explore coaching. I feel like I was kind of a natural coach, and people always wanted to kind of come to me and ask me questions. I would help them, and I enjoyed it. So I went down the coaching path and I enrolled in a 1 year coaching program. And that was really pivotal to my own growth and development. And I remember I graduated the program. I was rehiring my coach, and she said, "All right, what's the goals that you want to work on for the next year?" And I said, I want to create a 1 year exit strategy to leave corporate America. And I want to coach, speak, and write. And she said, okay, let's do it. Let's put it into a SMART goal, right? Think about what we want the experience to be like. And the very next morning, my boss calls me at 8 a.m., which he never called me. I worked remotely. And he said, our organization is being restructured and our team is being impacted. And he said, you can move into this other role or there's a severance package. And I was like, I just said yesterday I'm leaving. So I'm like, I'm out, right? Like, I was like, I didn't even think twice. I was like, I'm the most fabulous manifester ever, I guess, because this has to be a sign. So
Right.
I ended up leaving and starting my coaching business. Most people don't know this, but I failed miserably at first because for a lot of different reasons, right? One of them was it's very difficult to have worked in for someone all of a sudden. So, being an employee, then going to being an entrepreneur. So I didn't have a lot of structure. I didn't have a lot of support. And number two, even though I had gone through this 1 year coaching program, which was really pivotal, there was still a lot of healing work that I needed to do. So, because that was actually showing up, it was impacting the way that I was showing up for my clients, and even in terms of attracting new clients, because there were so many insecurities that I still had. And so I actually put it on pause for a while and really started doing therapy. And I also gone through a divorce. It was a very long, tumultuous divorce. And that impacted me a lot as well. And it was kind of one of those dark nights of the soul where you're like, everything in my life that I don't have this corporate job anymore. Like, we lost our house, my marriage ended. Here I was with a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, living back at my parents' house even, and so that was really difficult. And then, like I said, I was really working on doing some therapy and just healing and navigating that. And then I ended up taking a fellowship in DC doing foster care reform. And that didn't work out to be the greatest experience either. I loved the organization I loved the fellowship that had the training through, but I didn't love the organization that I was working for. So I said peace out at the end, and I said I'm going to hit restart. And my kids and I moved to North Carolina. We literally packed everything that fit into the car, and I had a storage unit here in Chicago. We packed everything up in a car and made our way to North Carolina. It was a difficult time and it was a great time because, like, we didn't have anything. We slept on air mattresses for the first couple months. We had like camping chairs in our living room. And I think I was kind of seeing, like, are we really going to stay here? How long before I emptied out my storage unit and things like that? But I just felt it was just a sanctuary to kind of hit the reset button. And I started working with another coach and then relaunched my coaching practice. And now I've been in North Carolina 8 years as of July 4th. So I've been coaching the last 8 years, mostly Latinas, particularly on visibility and self leadership over the last 3 to 4 years. And then last year, a group of us actually came together and said, we're AIs here. We were AI enthusiasts. I had gone back to school actually to get a second master's in educational technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Really excited about some of the possibilities that came with AI. And so we were having a conversation and said, what if we didn't wait to be invited to the table? And what if we created our own table? And with that, we launched the Latino AI Summit. We had no idea what we were doing whatsoever. And in terms of, I don't think we realized the scope, the impact. It was more of like, hey, this sounds fun. Let's do this for our community. And it'll just be a little passion project, right? And all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, the amount of work. And I always say ignorance is bliss, because I probably would have said no if I knew how much it would have gone into it at first. But I'm glad that I said yes. And so and by we, I mean my co-founder, Dr. McCall Tapia, and I knew even before the summit launched, but this is something more like we saw the community and the support and just felt this kind of groundswell, almost like movement happening. And we were like, oh, wow, this is something more. This is not a one-time event. And we didn't know what would come next at the time. We were just like, okay, let's just think about this afterwards. We just have to get through the summit and then we'll figure out the rest afterwards. So we launched the first Latino AI Summit in January of this year. It was amazing. We had almost 500 participants. We had 44 sessions, 62 speakers. More than half of them were Latina, all different topics covered, first-time speakers, disabled folks represented, Afro-Indigenous, LGBTQ+. We were really wanting to make sure that we had representation, not just of Latinidad, but of those intersecting identities. And Dr. McCall and I really were focused on building psychological safety into the experience and a sense of belonging. And I knew that we were doing it on the back end, but I didn't think that other people would realize it. And I think that was the biggest surprise, because the event was a success. It was better than I even anticipated for a first event. And when we got the feedback, it was things like, I feel safe. I feel seen. This is the first time I've been able to see myself in technology. We had a couple comments, but my favorite was that were similar to this, but my favorite was from an ally who said, this isn't the most Latino AI summit I've ever been to. It's the most human AI summit I've ever been to. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, that's absolutely my favorite testimony of all of them. And there were variations that were very close to those same words. And so we realized, oh, this isn't just about like the learning. Again, it's about the community. It comes back to community. And so I've been pivoting myself now from the coaching space. I mean, I think always I'm going to be a coach to some degree, right? Coaching will always be integrated into the work that I do. But I feel like right now I'm giving a lot more attention to the community that we're building. And it's not just about hosting events, but it's also about creating that community. I've focused on the last couple of years on more of the individual side of visibility, and this is now about collective visibility. Now we have, this AI revolution happening. And let's be real, there's positive impacts and there's possibilities and there's harmful consequences. And I
Hmm.
want to make sure that our community is part of the conversations and making decisions around things that might impact us and affect us, as well as on the positive side of things is like, how do we use this to our advantage to collectively advance right now? Like, I don't know if we'll ever have another opportunity right now to to really have almost like this moment that where we have the collective power, we have the numbers, right? There's 62 million Latinos in the U.S. Latinas are, growing business faster than any other demographic. We're bringing the GDP is what, like 4.2 trillion. We're the fifth largest economy if we were a country as Latinos. So we have all these numbers. It's like, all right, let's take that and let's use that to our advantage and leverage this moment so that we can find economic prosperity, opportunity, because there's been a lot of gaps and disparity. So it's a really exciting time.
Yes. So you've got the AI Summit coming up. Can you talk a little bit more about what to expect? What are the workshops look like or keynote speakers? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yes, I'm excited. So we have our next summer summit coming up. It's coming up July 22nd and 23rd, 2 full days of workshops. We went on a listening tour after the last summit, and we also had post surveys. And we really wanted to take the feedback from the community. Our point of view has always been about building with community, not for community. And so we took all of that feedback and we've integrated it into this summer summit. So we have 2 days of session. Some of the sessions are a bit longer for some of the hands-on. So sessions are anywhere between 45 and 75 minutes long. It's a lot of practical application hands-on workshops, right? Like, how do you build an agent? How do you use AI to build presentations quickly and efficiently? Vibe coding is one of the topics. So how do you build an app or a website if you don't know how to code? And then there's also conversations around, what does this mean for the workforce? Like, how do you future proof your career? What are we have quite a bit of leadership development skills sessions as well, thinking about now with AI, emotional intelligence becomes even more important, right? So how do we develop emotional intelligence? What are some of the other leadership skills that we need to have in order to navigate where the future is going? And then we have two amazing keynote speakers. All of our speakers are amazing, but we have Marcelo De Santis speaking, who is a former CTO, CIO, sits on the high tech board, and he is the most loveliest human being ever. And even though he's been in the technology space for many years, he has his tech podcast. He is really talking about the humanity behind it. And so we're really excited to have him on day one as our opening keynote. Day two, we have Dr. Valeria Aloe, who I've been a big fan of forever. She wrote 2 books, Uncolonized Latinas and Unbreakable Latinas. Fun fact is I actually was the first person who ever bought the Uncolonized Latina book because it was like on a Kickstarter type of program. And I saw it and I supported it. And so I'm really excited to have her. And she's actually going to be talking about, with AI, is this an acceleration or an opportunity to accelerate our human consciousness?
Mm.
So this is where, yes, you are going to get practical tools that you can go to work with the very next day, right? Or next week. You're going to learn these practical tools to integrate into your work and life. You're going to learn leadership skills. And then we're also just talking about humanity at the center, because that's our number one value at the Latino AI Summit, is humanity at the center. So it's a really well-balanced 2 days. You'll walk away learning new tools, new resources, new frameworks. But the best part, hands down, is the community. It's an awesome community. There's no gatekeeping, no jargon. The big joke is McCall and I aren't even techies, right? We always say we're like the community builders, infrastructure builders. We bring in the techies, and we have great companies that are showing up and leading some of these sessions, including folks from Google, from Slack, Salesforce, UN, even business owners. So there's something for everyone. We have four tracks. One is AI foundations. Another one is build and apply, which is a lot of the hands-on workshops. We have a in Espanol track. The community wanted that, so we have a full Spanish track, and we have a student and emerging professionals track. So, and it's
Wow.
interchangeable. So you can go to any of them. And the best part is you get all the recordings afterwards for 30 days. And so even if you can't, obviously you can't be all at four sessions concurrently, but you have
Right.
access to all the recordings as well. So
Wow, that's awesome. It sounds awesome. Doesn't matter where they are in their career or even their field. It sounds like there's a little bit for everyone.
absolutely.
I just hate that we're running out of time. I want to keep talking to you. So I'm going to have to start wrapping it up because I want to be respectful of time. But I have just a couple more questions.
Yeah.
What excites you about the future in the workforce for Latinos?
What excites me? Well, we're going to be 78% of all new networkers by 2030. So we are going to be the majority, of new incoming labor. And I think what excites me is there's an opportunity to redefine leadership, like we were talking about earlier. Leadership has looked one way for many years. And I think that Latinos are positioned to lead in this time because of the creativity, the problem solving, the resource, the even our values that we carry around, like familia, that translate into being we're thinking about everyone. How does everyone win? And so I think that's what I'm really excited about, is to see leadership start to look different, and I think to be more like inclusive.
Thank you so much, Ruby, again for spending some time with me today. I am so excited for all of the blessings that are coming your way and all of the exciting work that you're doing. I know you are truly making an impact and you are inspiring many. So thank you very much, Ruby. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, follow, and share this with someone who might need it. Stay tuned for the next one.